Texas fight, and it's goodbye to A&M. What a win for the Texas Longhorns in the SEC tournament. I'm jumping the gun here. Have the Longhorns now done enough to punch their ticket to the NCAA tournament? We'll discuss on a special live edition of Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin native, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Longhorns. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns your first listen every single day. And of course, we had to do it to them. A special live post-game reaction edition of Locked On Longhorns as Texas knocks off Texas A&M in double overtime in the second round of the SEC tournament. The final score, Longhorns 94, Aggies 89. And what a win it was for Rodney Terry's crew. Texas keeping its NCAA tournament hopes alive with back-to-back wins in Nashville. They take down Vanderbilt yesterday, and they knock off Little Bro today. Oh, it's so sweet, isn't it? This was such a good year for Texas A&M. This was a down year for Texas, and yet the Longhorns took 2 of 3 from their arch rivals from College Station. That's pretty freaking cool. And, of course, the win means that Texas still has a chance to dance. We'll talk about what Joe Lunardi thinks of the Longhorns tournament resume here in a moment. First, I want to give a shout-out to today's sponsor, Monarch Money. Head over to Monarch Money. They are your personal CFO. They're going to give you full visibility and control over your finances. Make sure you use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. We are live, so if you are tuned in live, comment with your thoughts in the live chat. Of course, if you're watching or listening after the fact, comment below with your thoughts on today's win. Shout out to Paxton with a Texas fight. Yeah, that's exactly what this game was. Texas fight personified. The Longhorns were up against it. Texas was down by 5 points in the first overtime. I thought the game was over, yet the Longhorns fought back. They answered the bell time and time and time again today. They forced that second overtime. And even though Kendall Weaver fouled out at the end of regulation, and even though Tremont Mark fouled out very early in the second overtime, Texas still found a way down the stretch to make those winning plays. And too often in the regular season, in close games, in late situations, Texas didn't make the plays they needed to make. That's why they were 6-12 in the SEC's regular season. In these 2 games in Nashville, more specifically this game today, Texas made those winning plays in crunch time to get the job done. Credit goes to everybody, man. I mean, 10 guys played today. All 10 guys scored. Texas had 6 players in double figures. Kendall Weaver, a great game for him. How about 10 points in just his 3rd game back from injury, 6 rebounds. He's such a spark plug for this team defensively on the glass, and he gave you a little bit of unexpected offense as well. Shout out to Caden Shedrick, man. He's been a little bit of a punching bag for Texas fans this year. He's far from the most physical big man the Longhorns have ever had. He didn't have a great rebounding day, but he was 10 of 10 from the free throw line. We're talking about a 64% shooter who knocked down all 10 of his free throws today. And in a game that obviously takes 2 overtimes, every single point was critical. So to see Caden Shedrick, and he hit some of those free throws in that second overtime as well, to help put the game on ice, that was big-time stuff for him. Big-time stuff for everybody. I mean, Trey Johnson, not the best shooting game of his career, just 8 of 21, but he had a couple of hot streaks, including a huge 3 from the logo in the second overtime to give Texas the lead. He was money when he absolutely needed to be. Of course, Tremont Mark, before he fouled out, I'll give Rodney Terry some credit. Now, if RT ends up losing his job when this season is all said and done, I think he's going to be wondering what could have happened if I made Tremont Mark my point guard a little bit earlier, right? Because this Texas offense has been completely different in these last 2 games with Tremont Mark running the show. Jordan Pope, Julian Larry, tried those guys during the regular season, could never find the rhythm that this offense was looking to find. You make the move to Tremont Mark in the SEC tournament, and it's been different. It has been different. He was great. 5 assists for Tremont Mark. He was facilitating well, had a couple of great passes, a gorgeous kick out to Jordan Pope for a corner three, a nice feed to Caden Shedrick. I think that came in the first half for an easy dunk. He plays in control. Like, to me, Jordan Pope and Julian Larry look rushed every time they have the ball in their hand. They're sporadic. They're like always freaking out, and it leads to some problems with Texas on the offensive end of the floor. Tremont Mark's not a traditional point guard, but he sure looks more comfortable playing that position than anybody else on this Texas roster right now. So I'll give RT some credit for making that change. Obviously, you give the player, Tremont Mark, some credit for being able to adapt to his new role and to do it at the most critical time of the year. That's not easy. And Tremont Mark has changed the narrative on his one and only season at Texas with what he has done in these first 2 games in the conference tournament. And Paxton brings up a great point. Finally, a healthy team. This is only the 4th game this season the Longhorns have had their full complement of players. 2 of them have come in the last 2 days. And you could argue 2 of Texas's best 4 or 5 wins of the year came in these last 2 days. So I'm not going to sit here and act like Texas would have won the SEC regular season title if Kendall Weaver had played every game this year. But I think Texas would have won at least 1 or 2 more regular season games to where they wouldn't be having to fight for their tournament lives this week. It's nice having everybody healthy. And Kendall Weaver, man. I mean, if you watched this team last season, you know what he did in late February and March to help Texas make the dance and make it to the round of 32 in the dance. Having him back, even though he's still not 100%, makes a huge, huge difference for this Texas team. Loved the way the Longhorns played in the first half. They were up by 6 at recess. They actually were beating A&M at their own game. Now, this did not continue throughout the final 30 minutes, but Texas was plus 12 in the paint in the first half. They were plus 2 on the glass. A&M only had 2 offensive rebounds. The Longhorns took it to A&M in the first 20 minutes. They were beating the Aggies at their own game. A&M's the best offensive rebounding team in the country. They're one of the most elite defenses in the country. They're one of the most physical teams in the country. And Texas, in that first half, when they were able to build up that 6-point lead, was giving A&M a dose of their own medicine, which was pretty cool to see. Now, you look at the final box score, the Aggies ended up with 20 offensive rebounds, which is way too much. And some of those offensive rebounds came late in regulation and then the overtimes, and it gave the Aggies some second chance points that Texas didn't need to give up. But thankfully, the Longhorns were able to overcome being minus 13 on the glass for the entirety of the game to get a win. It was just grit. It was gritty. It was tough. And just the level of effort and intensity from this Texas team. You can't help but ask, where has that been? Where has that been for Texas? Why did it take until March 12th and March 13th to see that kind of stuff from this team? Why didn't we get that against Georgia late in the regular year? Why didn't we get that against Oklahoma in the regular season finale? Where was that against Arkansas in either of those games against the Hawks? Where was that against South Carolina? It's annoying that it took this long, but perhaps better late than never. And Joe Lunardi, as of right now, has Texas in the NCAA tournament. Now, he has the Longhorns as his very last team in. So that means the Longhorns would be playing in the first 4 in Dayton. But I think you take that because 2 days ago, it looked very bleak. I mean, the Longhorns had like a less than a 5% chance to make it to the NCAA tournament. And now all of a sudden, Joe Lunardi has him in. Curious to see what the other bracketologists think once today is done. But Texas got a little bit of help from the rest of the country today. Now, they did not get help in the ACC tournament because North Carolina beat Wake Forest, but you had Indiana lose today. That's another bubble team. And I think Joe Lunardi actually swapped Texas with Indiana. So right now he has the Longhorns in and the Hoosiers out because of today's results. You also had Xavier lose to Shaka Smart and Marquette in the Big East tournament a couple of hours ago. So that's 2 bubble teams that lost today. You had Ohio State lose yesterday in the opening round of the Big Ten tournament. Unfortunately, Ohio State beat Texas, so you wonder if head-to-head is going to play a factor in the committee's ultimate decision come Sunday. But you have gotten some help. there hasn't been any bid stealers yet, knock on wood, and some of the other teams that the Longhorns are competing with for those final spots in the dance have not done what Texas has done. Texas has won 2 games in the conference tournament. Again, Ohio State lost in round 1. You had Xavier and Indiana lose in round 2. So advantage Texas. Now, if you really want to solidify your spot in the dance, go ahead and beat Rick Barnes in Tennessee tomorrow. You beat the fake UT in the quarterfinal round of this tournament. You make it to the semis, then there's no more debate. Texas will be in. And hell, Texas might not even have to play in Dayton. If they win 3 games in a row against 3 tournament teams, and oh, by the way, 2 of those games would basically be road games with Vanderbilt and Tennessee in Nashville. You do that, I don't even think Texas should have to play in that first 4. But the question now becomes, I don't want to be negative, right? You shouldn't count Texas out of tomorrow's game. But obviously the question is, at this point in time on Thursday night, it is Thursday, right? Has Texas done enough to get in the dance? Roy asked who is on my shirt. Yes, this is Mo Bamba. I don't know if that's good vibes or bad vibes wearing a Mo Bamba shirt, but I got this when I was a student at Texas, one of those free t-shirt giveaways in the 1 year that Mo Bamba played his college ball here in Austin. I haven't brought this one out too often this year, but hey, you beat A&M, you get a huge win like that at a must-win game. I think it warrants the Mo Bamba Time to Hoop shirt. And thankfully, there is still time for Texas to be hooping because of what they did. Paxton says, yeah, not to be a ref guy, but they were horrible on both sides. Oh, man. I mean, yesterday's game and today's game just took forever. It's a huge problem with college basketball. Like the last 5 minutes of a college basketball game takes 30 minutes, 35 minutes. I mean, when you get double overtime, obviously that makes it take more than an hour, but it's just brutal. And it feels like those officials were getting paid by the whistle today, both ways, right? Wade Taylor's such a pain in the ass, dude. He is a poor man's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, just a total free throw merchant. I can't stand him. Now, would I love to have him on my team? Of course I would, just like I'd love to have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on my favorite NBA team. But playing against that guy is such a pain in the rear end because he just flops and dives and falls all over the place, and he gets every single call. And yeah, the refs, in the first half, they were letting it play. In the second half and in overtimes, it felt like everything was a foul. Jay Billis was complaining relentlessly on the telecast. You know, it's frustrating for the players and the coaches because they have no idea what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. It was a tough game to watch from an officiating standpoint, but what a game. Definitely the game of the SEC tournament. I know Ole Miss and Arkansas played a great one before Texas and A&M played today. But maybe the game of all conference tournaments to this point. I don't know if we've had any other double overtimes around the country to this point. So, hey, the good news is Texas found a way to win. If they lost that game, it would have really hurt. That would have been a tough way for the Longhorn season to come to an end. And that would have been a really tough way for the Rodney Terry era to potentially come to an end. But fortunately, Texas finds a way to get it done. All right, more thoughts in a moment. We'll take your thoughts as well. If you're watching this live, hit me up in the live chat. Texas 94, Texas A&M 89. Again, we'll give you the latest from the bracketologists out there. We'll also talk more about what Texas did right. We'll start to preview tomorrow's game against Tennessee right here on Locked on Longhorns. But first, we got to give some love to the sponsor for today's video. That is FanDuel. And of course, March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories. You can also bet on who's going to win the championship right now. You think Texas is going to go on an NC State-style run like the Wolfpack did last year? Put some money where your mouth is over there at FanDuel.com. Conference tournaments this week. Of course, the real tournament starts 1 week from today. Got those first 4 games beginning on Tuesday. Texas could be in one of those. So many opportunities to make some money over there at FanDuel.com. And the FanDuel app is super easy to use as well. So visit FanDuel.com and make sure you get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, back here on Locked on Longhorns. Yeah, great question, Paxton. Look, Joe Lunardi's been a little bit lower on Texas than most bracketologists have in the last couple of weeks, But obviously, it's not a Lunardi decision. It's not a Jerry Palm decision. It's not a guy tweeting out brackets from his mom's basement prediction. All that matters is the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee. And I've talked about this in previous videos this week. Something that is not going in Texas's favor is all of the blue bloods that are also on the bubble, right? North Carolina, blue blood. Indiana, blue blood. Those two teams right there, the NCAA, which makes most of its yearly revenue from this tournament, would love to see those two teams, more specifically, those two fan bases in the dance. Texas is obviously a huge brand, but in basketball, we don't have the same cachet that North Carolina and Indiana have. This was football. See you later, Tar Heels. See you later, Hoosiers. You're done. Texas is always going to get the benefit of the doubt in football, in baseball, in volleyball, in most other sports. In this one, the committee's not supposed to look at brand power when they are comparing resumes. And to me, there is no resume comparison between Texas and North Carolina. Texas has 7 quadrant 1 victories now after today. North Carolina just picked up its second. I think it's second. I got to double check to see if the Wake Forest win for them counted as number 2. Before today, they only had number 1. Now, Carolina gets to play Duke tomorrow. Cooper Flagg's probably not going to play in that game, which is not good for Texas. Still think Duke is good enough to beat UNC for a third time this year. But again, you got to root against those other bubble teams. Seeing Xavier lose to Marquette, thank you, Shaka Smart. Haven't said that very often in my life. That's good news. Seeing Indiana lose today to Oregon, that's good news. Thank you, Dana Altman, for that. Seeing Ohio State lose yesterday to Iowa, that is good news as well. So I'd like to think the job is finished, but now it's not only root for Texas to beat Tennessee tomorrow, it's also root against North Carolina, which means you got to root for Duke. I feel like a communist saying root for Duke. Can't stand them, but that's what you have to do if you want Texas's season to continue into next week. Man, I'm just looking through my notes. I took so many notes here. I thought the game was over when A&M went up by 5 early in the first overtime. They got the first bucket. Trey Johnson with an inexplicably dumb foul right after the opening tip to start off overtime. Just gave the Aggies 2 free points. And then the next possession down the floor, A&M gets an offensive rebound, a kick out for an open 3. Boom, they're up by 5. Kendall Weaver's fouled out of the game. I'm thinking, oh my God, is this really how it's going to end? This how the season is going to end? And Texas, to their credit, they came back. They came back, and somehow, some way, Caden Shedrick was wide open for that dunk at the end of the first overtime. I have no idea how A&M's defense just had a collective brain fart in that moment. I'm very thankful they did, because I don't know what Texas was going to do on that possession, because some of the other late game out of timeout possessions for Texas weren't pretty. And it looks pretty when the other team just leaves your big man all alone on the low block and he gets an easy 2-handed flush. That was big time for the Longhorns. And in that double overtime, Jordan Pope was so clutch. Jordan Pope had a couple of head-scratching moments. He's had some of those in seemingly every game this year. But that's a guy who went for 40 in a non-conference game earlier in the year. He averaged 17-plus at Oregon State last year, back when Oregon State was in a real conference. He's a good player, and he's been great. OU game with 21. He had 14 against Vandy yesterday. Pulling up the box score again. I think it was 14 today. 13 today, including that huge shot. He got the favorable matchup against an A&M big. He gets the step-back jumper to fall from the elbow. That put Texas up by 4 with 57 seconds to go in the second overtime. That was massive, massively clutch for Jordan Pope. And you're seeing the experience of this Texas team start to show up, y'all. I know a lot of that experience, most of that experience has not come in Austin. Right? Most of these guys played most of their college games at other schools, but Tremont Marks played a bunch of college basketball. Jordan Post played a bunch of college basketball. How about Caden Shedrick? We talked about his free throws. How about him saving Julian Larry's ass on that horrible inbounds play in the final minute of overtime number 2, where Julian Larry was trying to throw like a lob in the corner to Trey Johnson, and Trey Johnson zigged, and Larry was expecting that could have easily been a turnover, but Sheddy on the spot. Caden Shedrick goes and gets that ball. He gets fouled. He makes those 2 free throws. Clutch, man. I have been as harsh of a critic on Caden Shedrick as just about anybody has this year. But again, 10 of 10 from the free throw line and going to get that ball in that spot. Obviously, just getting an inbounds play or getting an inbounds pass doesn't show up in the box score. But I don't know if Texas wins this game if it's not for Caden Shedrick tracking that ball down. Because if he doesn't, A&M gets the ball with a chance to tie or take the lead. That would have been brutal and very, very costly if they turned it over in that spot. What a game, man. What a game. I'll be honest, I didn't see this one coming. I thought it'd be close. I said on my radio show this morning that it would be close. I thought Texas was going to cover the 5.5 to 6.5 point line that was there on FanDuel. I wasn't sure the Horns could make the plays they needed to make in a close game because, well, again, more often than not in the regular season, they didn't. But they found a way to get it done despite a bunch of guys fouling out, despite A&M shooting 40 free throws, despite getting out-rebounded by 15. Texas finds a way. The grit, the toughness. We saw it. I've said it. Desperation is a hell of a drug. Texas has played incredibly desperate. They knew what they needed to do when they got to Bridgestone Arena. They've done it. Have they done enough? Again, they can solidify a spot in the tournament with one more win. Maybe they've done enough, but if they can get one tomorrow, you don't even need to watch the bracket unveiling on Sunday. Now you will because you want to see where Texas is playing and who Texas is playing. But if they win tomorrow, you're in. As of right now, it's still dicey, but the Longhorns have given themselves a chance with what they have done in Nashville. Texas fight personified. A great year for A&M, a down year for Texas, and the Longhorns take 2 of 3 from little brother. Can they beat us in anything? I mean, this is awesome, man. I missed beating up on the Aggies every year when we were in different conferences. I'm glad we get the chance to do this again every year in pretty much every sport. So glorious to watch. All right, we'll have more. Tomorrow morning's Locked On Longhorns will drop very, very early. We will continue to recap this game. We'll give you the latest with bracketology. And, of course, we will preview tomorrow's game against Tennessee. Can the Longhorns knock off Rick Barnes and the Volunteers to, again, assure themselves an NCAA tournament at large bid? Shoot, if they win tomorrow, they'll be 2 wins away from an SEC tournament championship. Why not dream big, boys and girls? Don't count them out just yet. Appreciate y'all watching. Appreciate the live comments from Paxton and Roy. Again, if you're not watching this live, comment below with your thoughts. I will respond to as many of those as I can, but we appreciate you making Locked On Longhorns a big part of your day. Check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton as well to be up to date on everything going on around conference tournament week. March is here. You need to be the most informed college basketball fan throughout the madness. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Special thanks to Monarch Money and FanDuel for sponsoring this live stream. And special thanks to all of you for tuning in. That's going to do it, though, for this live edition of Locked On Longhorns. Until next time, horns up, mic's off. Talk to y'all tomorrow. This is Locked On Longhorns.